We're recording.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the January 22nd meeting of the Capital Subcommittee of the School Committee. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from October 24th, 2024. Do I have a motion? Okay, Carolyn.
Seconded.
Thank you. Mariah, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, let's move on to our second item, which is the school R&M repair and maintenance funding, the memo. You know what? I think I'd like to. Oh yeah, the repair and maintenance funding, the memo from Mr. Simmons, and also I think Charlie, you have some of this year's numbers to be able to compare the
Yes.
actuals.
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to try to pull it up on my screen or?
Yeah. Please, because I can't. I don't know how.
Let's see. Sorry, I've got a.
Charlie, I have them if you need me to pull them up.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I've got Johnson Controls Energy Management Systems up on my screen. I got a whole bunch of screens here.
So which one do you want to start with?
You can start with the memo.
Memo? This one here?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you. So for FY26, I am asking the school committee to provide $3,773,584 for outside service contractors. These are the people that we use to repair and maintain the school buildings, roofing, and electricians, and fire alarm, and so on. I didn't touch anything with personnel right now because it was a reorganization with the building department that did include the school department for public buildings. And we're looking to finish that with the 6th floor. And so the increase would be 4.5% over last year. The CPI for construction, which is different than the regular CPI, is running about 5.8%. And we've had this discussion before where the town has a policy of 2.5% for increase. And a year or two ago, we were seeing in maintenance and construction about 9%. So I was trying to split the difference and come up with a number that I thought was reasonable. 4.5%. And essentially that is taking care of the new Driscoll School because everything's coming out of warranty fully. Actually, parts of it are still under warranty, the energy management system, but everything is coming out of warranty or has come out of warranty. So these monies would be used for all the school buildings. I did point out that I'd like to hire 2 non-licensed HVAC technicians. And these persons would be primarily doing belts, greasing and oiling, filters, checking motors. This has been typically subcontracted out and is very, very expensive. And I estimate the savings between $300,000 and $400,000 just for the schools. While I was away in April, I had put in this request before, and the town approved getting me 1 licensed HVAC person. So I have been working on that. We have interviews as we speak. That person would be doing the same thing, same kind of maintenance, and trying to pull that in-house would be very beneficial for all of us, town and schools, and my staff. I do want to point out that we have in the budget, again, this year, 3 licensed HVAC technicians that I have not been able to fill those positions. I feel that the positions are not offering enough money. I've had 1 interview in 6 months, and I thought we had the person, but he just disappeared. Apparently he found another offer. So we subcontract out a lot of that work to several companies. And especially with the Driscoll School, I'd like to pull some of that in and do our own work. I think I get a better response, and obviously saves money. Third thing on a personnel would be another assistant for energy management system. So presently we have a manager and assistant, and that's been the model for many, many years. And with Driscoll coming online, very high-tech, complicated building, all electric, versus an older buildings, you know, basically from 1928, 1950s. Quite a lot of points that we have to monitor and points that contact us with problems. And we have been able to keep our heads above water, but I really think we need a second assistant for my staff. Just the last few days, actually, I've been acting as the second assistant because it's been so cold, and that's actually what I was doing before I got online. In order to make sure that the buildings are heated and cooled properly, in order to make sure they run properly, the monitoring and call it the maintenance of the systems is desperately needed. And a person like this would be very beneficial to us all. I
Can we
noted,
stop it? Oh, sorry. Do
sorry.
you want to go through the whole thing, Charlie? This is also, I have comments and questions. This is really interesting, but if you want to go through, what's
Well,
your,
I'm gonna mention.
okay, go ahead. Sorry. I'll save my questions.
That's better.
The with the increase of the 2 non-licensed HVAC people and the energy system specialist, which is another assistant, the school department's share would be $167,300. That's 75% of the pay. 25% goes to the town. One of the last things I wanted to point out is that when Pierce gets online in 3 years, we'll be in the same situation. It would be somewhere between 30 to 50,000 points coming online for Pierce because it is a bigger building. The actual number is going to be coming in as soon as we start picking contractors and getting submittals for design. So not this fiscal year, obviously, for Pierce, but in the next few years, I will be asking for more staff. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay,
Carol, can
Carolyn.
you just quickly say what did
No,
22
Carolyn, excuse me, Carol.
Yeah,
Carolyn had asked first to ask some questions, and then I'll have you ask, okay? She's on the committee. Carolyn?
Thanks. And thanks, Charlie. So I read your memo before and I read it with interest and I appreciate the detail. And forgive my ignorance. So EMS points, can you sort of equate that to, I mean, I guess you kind of are, but I'd be interested if you can elaborate like corresponding person hours required and how that sort of lines up financially, or should we just look at the 167 and change or that's for the all 3 positions? No, 2, the 3, yeah. Is there anything a little more you can say just to help us understand what these points mean as we see the new buildings coming online?
All right, first of all, what is a point? A point is a command by the computer to turn on a boiler
Mm.
or a pump. There's also input points, which is the temperature of a space or an
Mhm.
alarm or a flow switch or so on.
Mhm.
Older buildings, there's not that many points. Newer buildings have quite a lot of points in order to control the equipment. I can say over the last few days, my staff has spent a lot of time working on the energy management system to make sure that no buildings freeze and that we don't have any problems. It's been eating up part of my time too this week. And in the summer, it'd be the same thing, but air conditioning, not as critical, obviously. So it's really hard for me to come up with a number of hours,
Okay,
but
that's fine. That, I just, and, going back to the challenges that you've had with hiring licensed HVAC professionals, I'm interested, and I believe you when you say you believe we're probably not able to offer enough. I wonder if you'd be willing to say, like, approximately how off are we in terms of what we're offering compared to other towns?
we are, depending on where you are, about $38, $39, and I think we should be up about $45.
Mhm.
In the private sector, they make a lot more money.
Mhm.
I'm looking for probably a person that's older, family, wants to go home at 3:30, and want benefits. So that is, hopefully I could get somebody with that pay grade.
Okay. And then just looking at, when I read your memo and then I looked at the FY 26, the more detailed budget request, the 6-page document. In section 6, that is HVAC, do these numbers assume the hires that you're hoping for?
No, I'd
Okay.
really realize those savings first before committing.
Mariah. Carolyn, you're finished, right?
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you. Mariah. Carol, I'll get to you. I won't forget you.
So, I think that last question is my question,
Mhm.
which is, when I did the math of the 4.5 versus the 2.5, it's about like a 70-ish $1,000 difference between what the town would be normally budgeting and what you're recommending. And then we're also talking about the $300,000 to $400,000 worth of savings. But I guess my question is, where's the savings? I only see the extra money, but I don't see the savings.
Well, the savings would be taking $300,000 or $400,000 out of repair and maintenance if we had these people to do instead of outside contractors.
But we're not
right now-
realizing, but this budget doesn't show us realizing the savings.
Not for this first year. I need to make sure that I get the people on board. And then we could talk the next fiscal year and reduce it $300,000 to $400,000 because it'd be realized.
Do they need a year to onboard, or is it just that you don't want to shift money into salaries and reduce it?
Exactly.
Because couldn't we just leave the money in services, not put in the extra people? And if you actually hire this, they can flip the staff, they could flip the select board could approve your transfer from services to salary?
When you say hire, you're talking about the 2 non-licensed HVAC?
Correct, the ones that, or the 3 positions that you're requesting.
The third position doesn't exist. It would have to go through our HR board and get approval on that. As far as taking money, we could. I do take some monies, usually twice a year, out of salaries and put them in your repair and maintenance budget because I can't fill the positions. The
Right.
3 vacancy positions. If you took out, obviously, the $300,000 or $400,000, I wouldn't need the 4.5% increase, but that's presuming that I get people on board on July 1st.
Okay.
So
I mean, I guess
just-
I feel like from my perspective, I don't feel comfortable with both both supporting the salary and leaving the money in place. One of the two things needs to happen. And I understand what you're saying if it's being a little bit of chicken and an egg, but I still feel like there has to be some sort of balance there.
So
Well,
Mariah,
this is the same sort of model for 7 years because we haven't been able to fill the positions for 7 years.
But then I just don't understand, sorry, Helen, I just don't understand why we're even requesting the positions if we know we're never filling them. You know what I mean? Like, I hear you. It's like, but if we're in this situation where we're never going to fill the positions because the town refuses to increase the salaries, then we should just accept that the service model is what we're in and fund it appropriately.
You can't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. If I don't ask for these things and someone says, well, why don't you ask them? Because you could save money. And I know your point. It's perfect. And I did have meetings with our HR director, and potentially, because the union's in the negotiations, there might be a chance that it could increase this fiscal year, but I don't know that for sure.
so I'd like to ask, I mean, I agree with you, Mariah, we can't fund both sides of the that piece. I think my question is, why not do the increase of the 167,000 that you're asking for? And assume that somehow because you did find one HVAC person, which I'm not clear why we're not sharing it with the town. Why couldn't, these two would be only for the schools? Is that what it is?
No, they'd be for both town and school, with the
Oh,
same
but
split.
you hired one.
No, I haven't hired anybody yet. I'm having interviews.
Oh,
And the only monies that were approved were from the town side. Because I made this request before. And not the school side.
so we're paying for one or two?
You're not paying for anyone. It's coming fully out of the town side.
Okay, it's a little confusing.
Mm.
Why we can't, split the person who's there at least, and if we get one. I mean, the other piece to me is, for the last 2, maybe 3 years, you've had this item in here to hire HVAC people. I'm not complaining to you, but I'm just saying, it just seems to me that unless something, some crazy thing happens, I'm not sure how it's going to happen. And, I guess the other piece that I'm concerned about is the increase of the 162,000 when, if we do get some savings out of this, I'd rather keep that 162,000 in the school department budget than in your budget. Not that, because we know we're facing difficult times. Carol, you had a question.
Yeah, so the new Driscoll added 30,000 EMS points. What about the work at the high school in 22 Tappan?
You put me on the spot.
But it's a similar magnitude, I'm assuming. It wasn't 5 or 10,000.
It was 22 Tappan, and just the new wing, the STEM wing. Everything else in the rest of the high school, the phys ed, the UA, and the
Yeah.
back of the building remained the same. So yeah,
Okay,
5 to 10,000.
so you're saying 22 Tappan only added 5 or 10,000, even though, okay. So, and I'm assuming Ridley was a low amount. It was because it wasn't quite as modern as 22 Tappan or Driscoll.
Exactly.
So of the 70,000 points that you're monitoring before the 30,000, is it that half of those are coming from schools? Is it 3/4 of them are coming from schools?
Probably 3/4 right now.
Okay, so 3/4, so that's what, so we're doing a 75-25 split, even though it's not being fully realized yet, and the cost of operating these high-tech systems.
Yes.
Okay. So I understand what Mariah and Helen are concerned about, but my understanding is you have to have those positions in your budget, otherwise you can't try and hire for them,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
And is the 300,000 or 400,000 doesn't represent the full amount of contracted services that you're using, does it?
No.
Okay, so if you don't have the full amount funded for contracted services, then you're gonna have a shortfall. And it sounds like you've been borrowing, or not borrowing, you've been reallocating money from these salary positions into your services position to cover that shortfall. So I don't think you're double dipping quite as much as Mariah and Helen were afraid about, because you aren't fully budgeting for the services if you end up running on a service only model for 12 months. Is that fair?
That is fair. Yeah.
Okay, so Helen and Mariah, does that make sense to you, what I've just explained? Helen, you're looking perplexed.
A little bit, but.
I'm perplexed too.
So what I was
Because-
saying is Charlie's budget doesn't carry the full amount necessary to pay for those outside services. And the way he funds it in full, if you need to use 12 months of outside contractors, is by taking money out of the salaries that he isn't spending. So you aren't double paying for something. It's just where the money is being allocated is being divided between salaries and outside service contractors.
But if we're asking for an increase of $300,000 to $400,000 in staff lines, then we are asking for an increase. Like, it's not like we're just talking about shifting from A to B. He's asking for an increase.
Well, your costs have gone up. When he's saying that, you know, he's thinking that the union prevailing wage is going up and that what he's being charged by outside contractors is going up.
Mhm.
So it's not like this is a fixed cost that's just staying the same from
But that's getting carried in the 4.5%. That's already inflated in the 4.5% of the repair and maintenance. So if the 4.5% isn't accurate, that's one thing, but it shouldn't be carried both in a percent increase and in a salary increase.
I think he was just breaking down where that 4.5% is getting allocated rather than a double.
Is that correct, Charlie? Is the salary that you were describing within the 4.5%? I thought that the R&M increase was non-salary.
R&M is not salaries. No, this is just for.
Okay,
No, the personnel costs are the 148.5. But they're more than last year. So that's the increased people? Or the increase in cost of people you already have?
No, this would be brand new people. And I had 167,300 as the school department share of those persons. And just to make a point, last year was the first year I asked for 2 non-licensed HVAC people. Figured I'd try something different. And again, I'm asking this year. And I can say, I'm hopeful now, but I can say that there seems to be a slowing of the economy. The prices for Pierce came in low. And I've opened up a few bids. Great pricing on the senior center. And we opened up a bid just for the plumbing services. There were 8 bidders that bid on us, 8 contractors. I've never had that before. So we have, obviously, we can choose like 2 or 3 of the lowest ones. I think I might stand a shot at getting these HVAC people. I'm crossing my fingers.
are you,
And that-
are
That
you,
was actually my point, that rather than, maybe this isn't fair, but rather than you giving back money to the town at the end of the year, the 167,000, if we were to keep it, and Susan, I'm not sure if this is possible, in a separate little line item, that if you needed it, we would have it for you, but otherwise we would be able to spend it in the school budget.
I think there's ways to do it. We could take the 167 and put it in Joe's repair and maintenance budget on our side. And then if they don't need it, then fine. And if they do need it, then I can transfer it back.
So
Well,
that,
can you make that decision though? How do you keep that money from being
That
double
doesn't
spent?
make sense to me.
what?
Sorry, go ahead, Carol.
No, I was just saying, how do you keep it from being double spent?
Yeah.
No, we would keep
think
it aside and see what happened during the year. If Charlie hired the two HVAC people, he would have more than enough money to cover everything he needs for his budget. If he doesn't, we'll know that.
Mhm.
And that would be a separate line item in our budget.
Can I ask another question, Helen, relating to this though?
Sure.
Charlie, what is the town sentiment that you have received on the other portion of the salaries, the non-167.3? Like if they can't fund, if they do not agree to fund their part, it's somewhat immaterial what the schools, whether the schools could fund, correct?
Correct, that's a very good point. We had our hearing months ago. Obviously, the town is not in good shape with the schools as well. I have not heard anything yet from the sixth floor as to what of my proposals, what they are budgeting and what they are not budgeting. And that includes repair and maintenance and utilities. So,
Am
I-
I,
oh, go
sorry,
ahead. No,
am
I
I
can say that I
understanding-
expect those numbers within the next month and a half, because we're gonna need them.
so all of this is after town school partnership split or before town school partnership?
Before.
Okay, that's what I thought.
No,
And
this is
Well,
hap-
no,
this is
excuse me.
happening.
This is after.
After.
Well, it's a
Okay.
mix though, because the increment increases before, right? Doesn't that get transferred from one to the other, or is that still considered after? Like if we were to agree that the town wanted the two and that we were gonna go above and about beyond the 2.5% from the town,
Mhm.
doesn't that get transferred like at that moment? Above the line before the split, or is it afterwards? No, you're right, it is below the line. I'm just like visualizing the page in my head.
Yeah.
Ignore me, it's below the line.
Yeah, I would refer that to the sixth floor. It
So
sounds,
this is-
but
This is us saying, this is a request for the school department to say that after the split, we agree with allocating X amount for Charlie's work
Correct,
before the split.
And that's,
correct.
and that would be before we have any money allocated for the school department to spend.
And so that's where someone is coming up with this notion of taking the 167.3 and sort of putting it aside in case the school department wants to use it for whatever.
Our needs.
To me, it feels very challenging right now without having seen, and I think we'll even know more tomorrow, where our budget is at to make any sort of commitment to anything for the building department. No offense, Charlie, you know, it's not personal, but you know the budget hole we're in. And of course, like we need the buildings to be operating and all of that, but in this situation, it feels quite stark right now to be able to make any commitment. That's just my personal perspective on it.
So I understand what you're saying, Mariah, in an academic way, except for the part that like, we don't really, I mean, what's the alternative? Not heating the buildings?
Well, this isn't a question of building heating because that's a utilities cost that is not in the budgets we're discussing right now.
Okay, well, I guess I mean,
It
ensuring.
would be
that the-
not, it would be not doing some painting, not doing some windows.
That stuff I can
shades.
understand, but Charlie's talking about like a lot of time and money gets spent to ensuring that the buildings operate, and that includes stuff like
I
heating.
hear you,
food.
and we have put in, I think, over the past 3 to 4 years, I don't think the data is presented to us tonight, but the amount that PSB has shifted towards the building department because of these needs being drastically underfunded, and then that was rolled into the override 2 years ago, because of how important this is. And I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I can't see it right now, given what we've heard in the past about our budget situation.
Right.
And
Right,
I'm
it's-
not outright challenging, I'm just trying to sort of get a context for.
Sure. I think if Charlie goes on to the next slide, the one with the actuals from the last 2 years, I think that will help us because there's 2 to 5% that doesn't get spent almost every year. And goes back into free cash, basically.
Yep.
Charlie, could you show, or Betsy, could you pull up that one? Yeah. So if you look at the end of the year, 2%, I can't do the math that fast. I'm sure Mariah can. 2% of 3 million is what, Mariah?
I'm not gonna embarrass myself by getting it wrong in public.
Well, 1% would be 300,000,
No, that would
right?
be 10%.
10%, sorry.
It's like 60,
tried.
it's like 60,000, right? For 2%. Or
Okay.
in that ballpark. Can I just ask one clarifying question? When it has the transfers line, was that the like special town meeting reallocation of funds, or what does the transfers refer to?
Those are the salaries, portions of the salaries that they transfer.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because this is just the non-salary budget, and so you're talking about where the salaries were transferred in. Thank you.
So 2% isn't that much. I think that's pretty damn good if you end up with only 2% unspent. And if you were 2% over, you'd be pretty proud of yourself, and if you're 2% under, you should be pretty proud of yourself. So I wouldn't view that as a problem. I hats off to Charlie for bringing it in so close, I think.
Yeah, no, and believe me, he does great work. I'm very happy with our working together. It's been terrific. I'm just concerned about this particular year and our budget and, what, where we're going to end up. And so that's why the increase for this year really concerns me. But, okay, is there anything else you'd like to point out in this, Charlie?
No, we pretty much covered everything.
Does anybody have, there's an asterisk by the 3.455. I'm not sure I understand that exactly.
So it has to do with the carryover to the next fiscal year because we didn't have the bills yet.
I see. Okay,
Bills did come in, they came in after the beginning of the fiscal year, so.
okay. All right,
Helen, I need to step away for like 2 minutes. I'll be right back, okay?
okay. I think, unless somebody has more questions about the repair and maintenance budget, Carolyn?
I think I asked this in an email, if it without wanting to create work and with the assumption that it would be fairly easy, I would be interested in seeing like the FY 25 and even FY 24 versions of the detailed, like the thing that's 6 pages, Charlie. At some point, if you had a minute to just kind of pull that and send it out. These sort of overall numbers are helpful, but especially if we're talking about concerns, I'd be interested in seeing kind of exactly where the money did go. And then I guess, and this might be really inappropriate and I can take this offline. I mean, I feel like it's incumbent upon me, and maybe it's a new person naivete, but if Charlie imagines that we can realize $300,000 to $400,000 in savings with a small increase in what we're offering on positions that he's trying to hire, I would be interested in knowing whether there's anything that I, as an individual school committee member, or the school committee as a committee, can do to help him in that effort. I really don't know what the politics are, but I feel like I have to say that because it certainly makes sense.
Charlie?
Um,
You don't have to answer that now. I just feel like that seems to me the logical and right thing to say, given the information that is in front of us.
Yeah, as was mentioned, the hardest thing is salaries because the salaries are split. Obviously, repair and maintenance isn't. So it took me a long time just to add people because if I could get the schools online, I couldn't get the town online and board and then vice versa.
So are we paying part of the new HVAC person?
No,
Okay. All right, I still,
Carol, can I make one comment, Helen, about Carolyn's question?
Yeah.
So Carolyn, like, we've talked about this before because obviously, like, it makes sense, right? Like, how do we do this? And I think my understanding is very rudimentary, but basically there's like this huge roll-on effect by adjusting some of the salaries that basically
Yeah.
makes the town not do it.
Yeah.
I
So
understand.
that's like, right, the like super quick version. And so
Yeah,
we're
no,
supportive, but we're not able
Yep.
to change anything on our side. So
Yep.
it's, yeah,
Yep.
frustrating thing.
I understand. I saw somebody having a similar conversation on Facebook about sort of a call for raising a certain segment 20%, and it's like, well, how's everybody else going to feel about that? So I understand what you're saying. Thanks. That's helpful.
Yeah.
okay, I think it's time for us to move on to the utilities cost. There's a little bit brighter picture. Okay, is this the whole piece or is there a little bit more, Betsy?
it's
Yeah.
the previous fiscal years.
Oh, okay. And if we put it all up at once, people won't be able to. It'll be too small.
We have it.
Yeah, I know we have it, but people who are online don't. Okay, why don't we start with fiscal year 23 and maybe you can just walk us through it, Charlie?
Sure. Fiscal year 23. We had a pretty sizable deficit and there were transfers made to finish the fiscal year. In the last fiscal year, I asked for a certain amount of money and I was not given that kind of money. I was only given about $160,000 increase.
Are you talking in fiscal year 24 or 23?
24.
Oh, can you move it down a little bit, Betsy, so we can see that one? Yeah.
So we ended up transferring $900,000 reserve funds. Plus we were given $120,000 because of the overlap with the old Driscoll and the new Driscoll and running gas and so on. Now there was obviously we didn't know exactly when the new school was going to open, so there was some estimating, but since we had such a large deficit in the previous fiscal year and knowing that Driscoll was going to be a bigger school, I felt that we needed a larger increase. And it didn't happen, so we ended up requesting a lot of money from the advisory and for the reserve fund.
For 900,000.
So this fiscal year, the increase was.
Push it down a little bit, Betsy. Thank you.
We're only into about half the fiscal year on utilities. I have some great news. The Driscoll School was being heated with electric boilers. And that is because of the construction and the fact that you needed to tear down the old Driscoll School in order to put the well field in so that we get the heat from the ground. That system was sort of started late summer. It's been working great. I checked with my staff today. The electric boilers are not running.
Oh.
They have not been running.
Even in this freezing cold weather.
Even in this freezing 5 degrees this morning, they did not start. Didn't need it.
Wait, can you spell that out for me? Are you saying that there's a backup system, right? So
Yeah.
this, okay, I just wanted to, okay, thank you.
Originally we needed them because we didn't have the well field, and they're gonna remain in case there is a problem. But yeah, it's doing great. The electric bill compared to the last fiscal year has dropped about $30,000. And I'm waiting, I can't wait to see January with this weather. So I'm very optimistic that Driscoll's going to run very well and very efficiently.
That's great news.
That is
Charlie, is it $30,000 for the month of December, you're saying, or is that for the $30,000 cumulative for this fiscal year?
just for the month of December. It's a lot.
That's fantastic. So some of the increase that we saw last year and the year before will hopefully decrease a bit.
I did talk to Charlie Young last week. I would like to wait until the end of the month and get another bill and see where we're going. We might end up with a surplus. We might end up right on target, but I'd feel better getting more hard numbers, especially with the Driscoll School.
Mm-hmm. But so if you end up with a surplus in this, where does it go to? Do you keep it for utilities for the following year?
No. If there was a surplus, you could transfer it to repairs, which you've done in the past.
Okay.
But that hasn't happened for many, many, many years.
Uh-huh.
I think there might be an argument that it should go back into the reserve fund, since there's been so much money taken out for utilities over the last few years. I don't know if that can be done or if it has to go back into free cash, but a lot has come out of reserves, and if it's actually due to utilities, I think I would make that argument.
All right. Well, whichever way it is, it's certainly better, good news as opposed to not good news.
Can I ask a question following up on that? Maybe you said this and I just missed it. Would the 26 proposal be reduced in either case? Like, is it possible? Because that is above the line, right? So like,
Well, as you can see, between Charlie Young and myself, assuming that FY 25's budget was correct, we're going to need about a $73,000 increase. Now that's very, very preliminary. And it's because Helen asked me to, where are we going with this? So those are the numbers. Those numbers could drop significantly as I get more information. And it maybe we wouldn't need an increase at all, and potentially we might even get a decrease out of it.
well, that's what I'm trying to figure out is when you'll know that, just because like last year, I think we ate like almost $1 million, right? So
again, if I could get some numbers for January, I could get some predictions going on and see where we end up.
okay.
I'm going to caution you though, because Trump is talking about a trade war with Canada, and they've already talked about putting tariffs on hydroelectric power coming out of Quebec, which could impact Massachusetts electrical costs. So let's not count our savings before they hatch in this uncertain period of time.
Okay.
Oh, if I could back up just a minute. So typically I heat a building with, in this kind of weather, with generating water temperatures of about 190 degrees. The maximum temperature you can get out of an electric building, the way it's designed at Driscoll, is 130 degrees. That's the max. So how does it work? It works because we have a lot of insulation. The coils are a lot larger. And the rooms are 70, 72 degrees. It's incredible how the system works. And we're not sacrificing comfort at all with only water temperature at 130 degrees. If you asked me that this 5 years ago, I'd say absolutely impossible, but it works. So I'm actually doing a hybrid of this for the senior center. We've already started working on it. And I'm taking existing equipment and converting, it's like the chiller, I'm converting it into a chiller / heat pump. And we're gonna heat the building electrically in about a year.
Mhm.
And I'm curious where that's gonna end up.
Well, the geothermal though adds a lot to this.
It does.
Yeah, that's what makes the big difference, and hopefully we'll have the same effect at Pierce that we have here.
Yeah.
This is great.
Can I just have one more question? How do the utility costs at Newbury and the old Lincoln factor in? Are they in your budget or are they in the Pierce School budget?
No, they're in my budget, my operating budget.
So, and you think that was just a wash with what the old Pierce was costing?
It's a wash or it's a little bit less, frankly.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say thank you to Charlie.
Yeah,
You're
It's
welcome.
always a pleasure. Thanks, Charlie.
well, he's not done.
Well, still, I just want to say, I mean, it's like, you know so much, like you have all these data points and like, it's really impressive and thank you.
This is my 34th year. The first time was with Jim Walsh. So we've come a long way.
Charlie and I almost came on together.
Oh,
Okay, an update on the mini CIP, deferred maintenance projects.
yes, so we did do some work over the break at New Lincoln. We're going to continue work in the summer on New Lincoln, carpeting and painting, Runkle carpeting, excuse me, a little bit of floor repairs and painting. With the goal of trying to finish everything that's remaining on the list. I'm optimistic we can get done. We've already queued up a lot of the contractors and we're planning to start as early as we can, as soon as school's out. And the Lincoln and the Runkle School will be unoccupied, which makes it a lot easier. And,
Mhm.
So,
For this coming summer.
correct.
And the rest of, so have we finished except for Lincoln and Runkle, have we finished the rest of the deferred maintenance projects in the mini CIP?
We finished Baker. That was the first one. That was relatively small.
Mm-hmm.
We finished some of the minor projects, like Runkle had some work in the auditorium.
Right.
So, you know, the New Lincoln was the largest cost. So, and the other, I could just say the other buildings that had small amount of work were done. Unfortunately, I don't have that list right in front of me,
Okay.
but we're in good shape. Well, I want to add one thing. I did reach out to the painter and flooring guy about a month ago, month and a half. And my intention was to buy paint and flooring materials now before the tariffs kick in.
Mm-hmm.
I was concerned about how it would affect our plans and our budget going forward. What I was told by both is that we won't realize this for another year. The flooring, all flooring companies are going to pretty much have a small increase. Same with the painting. The one country that isn't mentioned is India for tariffs. And a lot of the materials do come from India.
Uh-huh.
Not everything, and not a total quantity. So I think there's going to be a shift from Mexico or China and get more materials from other countries that are not have a higher tariff, like India. But it will catch up with us eventually. So we're good.
Okay.
Do
that's
that,
good.
we're gonna be fine.
Thank you for looking ahead like that. That's important. Yes, Carolyn.
Charlie, you just said something that pinged a question in my mind. Do I understand correctly that more work was just done on the auditorium / gym floors at OLS? And if so, can you talk about that?
Yeah, there was sort of a hump and a rotted section on the outside of the wall. The gym, just to back up a little bit, the floor's been patched many times and it's okay. It works fine. But this section, the wood underneath was all rotted, so we had it repaired over the break, Christmas break, I should say. And it's safe now. No one's gonna trip.
So
Um,
was that, how was that funded and what did it cost?
It was repair and maintenance and it cost around $9,000.
Okay. And that's in addition to the work that was done over the summer there on the floor.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the mini CIP?
Yeah,
Carol, go ahead.
well, only because Susan sent around this email, what's going on with this dishwasher at Baker? And
Oh.
where's the funding coming from? Has the saga ended yet? Have you unraveled it, Susan?
No, I guess my concern is that the select board was, and you as well, were pretty adamant that doing any more work would be a burden to Charlie and his staff, and that we were not to proceed with any work until he had finished up what was on the list. So I'm just flagging it because Joe and I were surprised to hear about that, and I didn't know if there was another meeting or some other conversation that had taken place that maybe one of the two of us had missed. So that is why I sent the email, because as far as I know, the select board was pretty clear that the only thing we would be able to move forward with would be the Lawrence, and that wouldn't be until the spring when Charlie's bills came in. Did I misunderstand? Because I thought they were pretty clear.
I thought everything was contingent on the bills coming in. It wasn't being, the dishwasher wasn't no because of no new projects were getting approved until we'd know how much money, if any, was available. So I guess the question is, how did something get ordered and is proceeding without knowing how it was going to be paid for? And where did that ordering come from? And how was it planned for if you don't know, if you don't have the money for it?
Right. Well, I mean, that's a great question, and that's my question too. How did this happen when I don't know anything about it? Neither does my director of operations. So we don't know. We were surprised.
So that sounds like a process issue. You don't even know who ordered this dishwasher? Obviously, it wasn't the building department that ordered it.
Wasn't me. It wasn't Joe. We didn't know about it until I got wind of it and I sent the email on Saturday. So I have no idea what happened.
Okay, well,
But, okay, assuming good intentions wherever, we pay for part of the electrician and the plumber in the building department. Couldn't they install it?
I only have one electrician out of 3. The other 2 are out.
Wow.
Yeah, they had surgeries.
Oh.
One had his hip replaced, the other one had shoulder surgery. And I have 2 plumbers. We'll just say they're mature and they've been out on various illnesses that's related to old age, frankly, their knees and backs, and they get the work done. We're fine. We still sub out a lot, but I couldn't really spare anybody. I'm just trying to keep emergency things down and just do the basic stuff that doesn't cost a lot of money versus bringing in an outside contractor doing it. So.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm lost here. I guess I didn't get the memo about a dishwasher. Helen, can you fill in the blanks here.
I think that Susan can better than I didn't send the memo, but I did read it. Basically, there was a dishwasher somehow got ordered for which school?
Baker.
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 And to replace the one that's there. And it's a little bit more complicated than just a regular, the company you get it from installs it, if I understood correctly. And the question is the installation and the cost of installation. And my question was, since we pay for parts, substantial parts of the plumbers and the electricians in the building department, I think it's up to 75% of their costs, that why couldn't they do it? But Charlie's explaining that they're not capable of it, I guess.
So how does something get ordered and paid for? Somehow it gets authorized, right? Like, was that at the building level or?
We were just, go ahead, Joe can speak. He had heard from somebody that, we were gonna get this dishwasher installed over February vacation, and Joe and I were like, first we'd ever heard of it. So the point is we can certainly track that down, but what I'm flagging is last year there was an awful lot of angst because work was being done without going through the proper approval processes. And I don't want to go through another season of budget, like we did last year. And so I don't know how it happened. We were just informed about it. And
Yeah.
so.
Okay, why don't we, rather than going over and over this, I'm
should-
sorry to interrupt you, Susan, but I think why don't we just find out the details and next time we can have an update, okay? And then we'll know what not to do.
We're looking for, Helen, is clarity on whether or not we missed something, because I thought it was clear that we were told not to move forward with anything. And if we can, then that's fine. I just want to hear it. Which is why I sent the email over the weekend, just to say, did we miss something? Did something change? Because if it's changed, that's fine. But I don't want to get into, next month and then be taken to task because work was done that was not approved through this authorization process. So.
But I have a question. The authorization process only applies to deferred maintenance. Was the dishwasher something on the deferred maintenance list?
We added 3 pieces of significant kitchen equipment to the CIP this year.
Right.
And they were pretty, we felt pretty high priorities.
Correct.
But when we went through the reallocation process that was approved last year at town meeting, the Board of Selectmen ultimately decided that they would not support what the school committee had brought forward for a recommendation, but that they would pause any new work being performed until the work that had been authorized in the prior year was finished. And all the bills were in to see if there was really truly going to be enough money to reallocate to other purposes. So that's
Oh,
how.
I see. So this dishwasher was one of those 3 projects.
Exactly. And the one that
Okay.
I prioritized over that was to get the Lawrence additional space taken care of over at the Lawrence School was the next priority.
Okay. Thank you. I guess because I didn't get the email either, I was
Yeah, I wasn't
not
meaning.
anchored in reality either.
I had
Helpful.
sent a
Got it.
clarifying email to Charlie and Helen and Carol to see if there was something else that had transpired that Joe and I missed. It wasn't meant to be a big conversation today. We're just trying to seek out clarification as to if something changed. We weren't aware if something changed, and if it did change, then fine. Then we didn't even need to have the conversation, but nobody's been able to verify that the directive had changed.
It has not changed. That's clear.
Okay, that's why I sent it out. I didn't know it. If you don't know something, you ask.
Okay. I think we've beat that subject down now. Let's move on to the next one. And Charlie, I'm going to ask you to stay on for this one because I think your expertise might be needed. It's a discussion of outdoor security cameras at Brookline High School. And Hal, I think you're going to take it away.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. welcome.
Nice to see you. If I can just add a word, I was expecting, just on the previous subject, I was expecting this week to be terrible at school. Super cold after the 3-day weekend and the cold. Place was great. Usually I'm running around waving this thing, getting temperatures around the building because people are complaining about cold. All these guys did a great job. I had 0 complaints.
And no
yesterday
broken
and today.
pipes.
You
And
can
no-
bring that thing over to my house. Run around my house.
No frozen pipes, no problems, no complaints all around, a couple of, drafty windows and things like that, the usual. But really great. And I would advocate on Charlie's behalf again, that world of HVAC, as we know, it has mushroomed and the costs have mushroomed. And, he's got a couple of strong people around and we want to protect those people and have additional people to help out in an increasingly complex world. And the high school obviously being guilty of creating a large part of that complexity. Just doing our part.
Mhm.
Can I share my screen? Yes. So, just a super simple presentation. We feel we need to add exterior cameras to the high school. Why? If you've been outside on Tappan Street, you've seen the crowd out there. We have changed the campus. This was part of the goal of the high school building project, was to literally change what the campus looked like. And so by adding in that building, we've essentially changed the geographic center of the campus away from, say, the steps in front of the building. If you come after school, for example, you're not going to see the kids right on the steps in front of the building, right in dead center on Greenough Street. They've pushed down toward the nice new plaza that we have, and there's a lot more activity at all times of day between that corner of Tappan and Greenough, heading all the way down past the train station to the 22 building. And so the amount of traffic, so that part of the project was an immense success. We moved the center of campus, we created a building, and this, Helen is I don't know if Mariah was around, but you were probably on some of these committees at some point during this time. So much of the concern about this project was we're going to build this satellite building on campus and it's going to be this annex and it's going to be orphaned and it's going to become we'll have a bifurcated campus. And to everyone's credit, the plan that everybody came up with and agreed with didn't do that. It created a unified campus. But as you see from this picture, this is just a random picture I pulled off my phone of kids walking down the street. It is a changed environment around the building. There was a long time when kids have always moved between buildings and been out on the streets, on the public ways, on Greenough and Tappan. But it was 50 kids at a time going between the 115 buildings and the gym, or 60 kids going from the 115 building over to the UA and back. Now I've got hundreds and hundreds of kids every block going back and forth. So once an hour, I have a procession of kids going back. I should have gotten some videos. A little cold out today and we're in midterm, so it was a little different, but you've seen it. You've been here during the day. It's a totally different feel. And as we know, we feel that we need to have adult presence all around as much as possible. And part of that adult eye can be achieved by installing outdoor cameras. It was part of our original plan. I've got some of the language up here from that original plan. I think we all probably agree on the why. The how has long been a question. Charlie and I have been looking for years at different aspects of how we can do it. And we now have in from Lantel, again, the same company that does the other work in town, and they would have to be the ones to do it because it needs to marry into the system that's used around town. They have mapped out for us exactly how they would do it. And they surveyed with me, walked all around the campus, looked at every angle, asked a lot of questions about where we would need and wouldn't need to have coverage and what it would be, the type of resolution and cameras that would be needed. And so they've mapped out this system that would give us essentially coverage of the whole outdoor space around the campus. We're only talking about outdoor cameras. We're only talking about getting a picture of everything that's around the building at all times. We essentially have none of that now, other than a little doorbell camera that we have for the at 22 in the new building for the elevator and also at the front door. Other than that little doorbell camera, which literally talks to a screen on a telephone that's about this big, so the secretary there can buzz somebody in. Other than that, we have nothing. We have no cameras. We have no ability to know anything that's happening on campus. I'll briefly, we had an incident early this year where it would have been very helpful to more quickly understand the context of what was happening on the campus. And that would have been very easily done had we had this type of camera system on the outside. So that's the why and the what it would be. There's obviously some other questions, but yeah, I'm sure Mariah and others are going to have questions first.
Helen, can I ask my
Mariah,
question?
Go for it. Go for
Thanks.
it.
I had two questions. One was, I didn't see a camera for the front of 22.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, going towards the T.
Yeah, this is
Well,
this
or
is,
just anywhere
I
on the
just
front of
pulled this off
22.
of the bid documents. There is definitely cameras. We did a lot of conversation about exactly where, how you would hang it under the parapet there, where it would go, what type of resolution it would be down. And, essentially they assured me that this would give us complete, the model that Lancel built out for us was to give us complete coverage. So we would be able to identify kids, cars, anything on that street coming along on the eastbound direction along Tappan Street, including everything coming up the stairs from both directions.
Okay, and then my second question is, I'm assuming, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that this would not be used for, this would be used retrospectively. You would not be having someone assigned to look at it. This would be in the
Correct.
case of an incident, you could go back and review the tape.
Right, yeah, this would,
Okay.
we would have to obviously set up some very strict rules with the town and with the school committee about how it would be accessed, and certainly we're not planning on having live monitoring of who's walking up and down the street. We'd be like, there's been something's happened. We need to take a look and see who this person was that approached the school and what was happening. So yes, it would only be in the aftermath of events, not proactively.
In the middle of events, would you be planning to have a screen where you could, for example, if someone said there's someone suspicious outside, and then would you be able to look at it and see if you still see them when they are outside? Like, would you have the ability to turn on a screen in the front office to be able to look at them if you needed to in real time? Not that you would have someone sitting there all the time doing that, to your point, but would you be able to access them in real time if
There
that would
would
be
be a
useful?
live feed going to the screen. So yes, I imagine theoretically you could do that. I imagine there might be a few cases where that would be the case, but I wouldn't want that to sidetrack or to create the impression that we're going to be watching. That's not the point. And
No, I
again, if
understand.
there's
I'm
somebody
just
suspicious
thinking,
out in the street, my first response is going to be to grab this and get my security and my deans out there to find out what's going on, because they're going to give me much better intelligence than a picture on a screen.
great, that's very helpful. And I had one more question, which I will not remember right now, so I'll keep going and let someone else talk and come back to me.
Sarah,
I'd just like to ask, because I couldn't tell from the pictures, I assume the cameras are one story up and tamper-proof?
Yes. Yeah, these are all modern day cameras. Charlie and I did this, I don't know, more than 10 years ago, probably almost 15 years ago. We bid, and the cost at that time was, I think, more than the cost of this now, because you needed so many more cameras and you just didn't have the ability to get cameras and put them on poles and do it. And now the tiny cameras that can be tucked up, put at high distance, they have protective coverings, and they're giving you high resolution at 270 degrees, 180 degrees. The technology has advanced in our favor greatly over the past 10, 15 years. So, and yes,
That's
they would
great.
certainly be at height and tamper-proof,
Thank you.
tamper-resistant, I guess.
Carolyn? Are you finished, Sarah? I'm sorry. Okay, take your hand down. Carolyn?
Thanks. I have two questions. And that's minor because I'm sure this is only the beginning. I noticed the same thing Mariah did. What I was seeing was, I didn't see something on like the Tappan Cypress corner, where I know sometimes like kids crossing gives you spilkus there when they're running across Cypress, but that's just a minor. Helen, I wonder if you can give any context about other buildings. Like I've seen, I think in the Driscoll and Pierce, because they're new, are there cameras there? Can you give us context?
I'm trying to remember,
About-
but I think the issue is more high school specific. I think there are a few, but I can't remember exactly, so I don't want to give out information that I don't know. Charlie may know better. But I think the high school where you have young adults who, there can be issues, and there's a public tea stop right in front of the school.
Yep.
So between all those things, I see this as a very different situation than the elementary schools.
I don't disagree, and that's really, my question has more to do with anticipating the kinds of concerns that people sometimes have about cameras with respect to privacy issues, which are not concerns that I share, but that I have heard. So
Most of those issues in the past have been within the buildings, not so much outside the buildings, because those are public spaces that people can.
well, no, I mean, there's a whole, and I'm just being realistic, and I'm not arguing this, but we heard, like, there was a whole conversation in town meeting a few years ago.
I know, I remember Amy Hummel was very upset about a lot of and some other people on town meeting.
So just in anticipation,
Yeah.
that's why I'm wondering if this would be the only place where we have cameras, or if we already have cameras operating at other schools.
Charlie, Joe,
You have cameras at every other school building. Primarily installed near doors and only looking in the area around the doors and not
Okay,
towards the street.
okay, great, thanks. And then, so what's the process here, Hal, Charlie, Helen, Susan?
well,
Like,
what I first want to ask, maybe I can then interrupt you, is what is the cost of this? First of all, do we know? Do we have a sense?
We have a bid from Lantel, so it's going to be somewhere low, very low six figures. So 150 or less, unless there's other additions that are put on the town side and or on the police side about other things that they would want to have in this system. But just
And
over
that would have,
100,
but that would
somewhere between 100
obviously
and
have to go out to bid.
No, you don't.
Yes, but no, because it's a Lantel, it's a proprietary system. I'll let Charlie speak to it, but it's their system.
Blantel has a state contract. And you
Oh,
don't
I
have
see.
to bid.
Okay,
See, there's multiple security companies have state contracts.
so it doesn't have to go through procurement, 30B or whatever that is?
no,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be bid out. But then my next question is there capacity in the high school renovation? Because this was originally in there to do this project.
Well, this will go into the next phase of the conversation. Did you want to get
Oh,
other
okay, then
questions
let's
first or before we
finish.
talk about the money?
Before we talk money,
Yeah.
okay, then let's finish with the
I remembered
questions.
my question,
Yes,
which
Mariah.
was one of the cameras is pointed towards the T stop. Does the T have any, like, is there any requirement to get their okay on that? Or since it's a public space, we don't have to, or?
The T, of course, has cameras. There are cameras on the T stop already. Yeah, we'd probably have to get in contact with them and see where they want the limits, and there'd be a lot of limitations that Lantel I know is used to about angles and what it's picking up on cameras in areas where there might be blackouts on cameras, so that it's not picking up anything outside of the scope of
Like in
streets
the,
and
not
sidewalks.
anything in the backyards of Brington Road, for example.
Yeah, on Brinkton
Okay.
Road, up on Welland, exactly what that, because that camera could take in everything, but it's not going to be physically able to do that. It's going to have a blackout area once it crosses the street and crosses the sidewalk on the west side of Welland.
And
I see.
do you feel the need for it on Welland?
Yes, we feel if we're doing it, this is the time to get all of the exterior. It's an open campus. We have kids coming in all the time. It's so much better with our tap card system. It's been working great, and still we want to know what's happening all around the building, because it's like I said, it's a different campus than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Carol.
I'm a neighbor because I live on Blake Road, so I'm in front of the high school all the time. Are these going to be on 24/7, or are these only going to be on during high school hours?
I would defer to Charlie and Helen on that. My only interest is during high school hours and during high school events. What happens after that is not my call.
But isn't that part of the documentation that we're going to sort of have some, like you said, there's going to be some documents that articulate use and so forth, and that needs to be part of it.
What do
Yes,
we do with the others at the schools? Do we keep the cameras on when,
They operate 24/7.
I mean, it may be more expensive to turn them off and on than to just leave them on.
But Charlie was saying they're only on the doorways versus, you know,
Yeah.
every time I take a walk down to Brookline Village or the T stop in the evening or come back from something in town hall, I'm gonna be on the camera, which I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm just curious.
We're
as to
keeping eyes on you, Carol. We're keeping eyes
Yeah.
on you. Sorry. I
Well,
couldn't,
and to that point, I mean, I'm thinking through this, like Hal, if you cut it off in the middle of the street, what's to stop students from realizing that and crossing the street to do whatever things that they're up to?
again, I'm not trying to catch kids doing things that they're up to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give us additional ability to understand what's happening around the campus. It's, so yes, we're not going to create a system that's going to prevent kids from doing kid things,
Mm,
but we are going to have a way of understanding what's happening around the campus. So again, it would cover the sidewalks, it would cover both sides of the street, it would cover both sides of Welland. It just wouldn't go as far as people's doorways. So
I see.
yes, the kids eventually discover they want to go vape by the school, they can go stand, inside somebody's doorway on Welland. We're not going that far with the camera. We're looking at the immediate vicinity, the streets, the sidewalks, and that's about it.
okay. Carol, did you have another question? So do we want to take it,
So-
what's the next piece?
So we're funding. I'm still waiting. Arnie Marcus has stopped returning my calls. I don't know why. I thought he was going to pay for the whole thing, but he stopped. He's not returning my call. So short of Arnie Marcus pulling, sorry, that's a joke. Really, just for
Wait, who's
Helen
Arnie
and Charlie.
Marcus?
Yeah,
I
it's
know
just a
who
joke
he
for
is.
Helen
It's
and
okay.
Charlie.
Forget about it.
You
It
remember him,
is
Mr. Marcus?
it is our contention that this is an integral part of the school building project and should therefore be funded entirely out of the school building project. And I'm looking essentially for the committee's authorization to go before the building commission to have this conversation with them about the funding. There is money left over.
Mhm.
A lot of that money is being cautiously guarded for very good reason, because we know that we have an unknown expense with our HVAC system at 22, and we have an unknown expense with our tunnel project here at the high school. However, I believe, and this is what it's a small number compared to the number that's there and the number that's being used for both of those. Percentage wise, it's quite small compared to that, maybe 5% of what we're talking about in total for those two other projects. But those are, of course, unknowns, and that unknown, of course, is leading to all the caution. However, the tunnel project, we believe, is not fairly being billed entirely to, it's not fair to entirely build that project to the high school renovation project. It is an item that was discovered because of the project, but the undermining of that tunnel was not caused by the project, nor should it be entirely therefore on the project to make up the cost of that tunnel. That funding for that tunnel project, which could reach, high six figures, if not a little higher, that funding we believe should come from other sources, not from the high school renovation budget, or at least not entirely from the high school renovation budget, therefore leaving ample funding to take care of this project and some of the other smaller projects that were spec'd after the completion of the project.
And for those of us who weren't there for the project, cameras were included when the project was, no, okay, thank you.
Cameras were included in the education plan. Cameras were included as part of what we felt we needed for the campus. But for some of the reasons that have already been mentioned about the political climate and what was happening in town meeting at that time, and also at that time, without getting too far into the politics of it, there were other budgetary considerations going on at the time. We were not, the co-chairs, with our consent, decided that we were not going to be pursuing that item in the project because it was at that time, too contentious.
That's helpful, and thank you for stating it that way, just the facts only. Thank you.
So, Carol, you have your hand up still. Is that meant to? No. Okay, Mariah.
So I personally would like to see the sort of governance document before it went, before I was ready to support it for the building commission. I guess I want to understand the entire universe of use and scope.
Yes, I agree. Is that something that the school would be creating, or is that something that the school committee would be creating, or what is, I'm not sure what the entity is that creates such a document.
I'm not either.
Aren't you,
It's
Marcus?
probably you, but I don't know. Yeah.
Who created the document, if there is one, for the elementary schools?
I don't think there is one. I don't think we have a policy on cameras.
Ooh, you said the magic word policy, which means it's now Stephen's problem.
I was thinking that, but this could go on forever. This could go on forever if we.
Well, there is the surveillance committee, which might have some useful content. To share.
Surveillance committee?
Yeah, does anyone else know what I'm talking about? There's like a town committee on surveillance.
It's a select board committee on, yeah, I think surveillance might be. I'm not sure it's disbanded, but it's paused. I spoke to Chaz about this not too long ago. It was, and I think I was asking him about it because of this conversation when it was percolating earlier in the fall.
And I would imagine you have peers, Hal, in other nearby districts who have
Yes.
these, who certainly would have some sort of guidance documents you could
For sure, yeah,
reference.
I can get you Newton's copy, because Newton went through this with North. So, and yes, and they do.
That would be
Theirs
very
covers,
helpful.
theirs
That would-
covers interior and exterior cameras. And again, we're not talking interior cameras, we're solely talking exterior cameras.
Well, perhaps if you could get their document, that might just be a way of us saying like if it's a strong document, then that's really helpful. If like we at least have a model, to a good model to work from.
Yeah, I will get that for you and send it to you within the next few days.
I mean,
Okay,
that's just my opinion. I'm just saying that I don't know how the committee feels, but that's my thoughts on it.
I have a question about funding, and Helen, you can laugh at me again for being naive. I don't mean laugh at me again. You can laugh at me for again being naive. But just trying to sort of cover all the potential ideas here. So there was this moment not too long ago where we did something like we transferred what was left over from the FRR project, I think, to sort of help out with Pierce.
no, what we did was the bonding capacity. We didn't transfer any monies,
Okay,
but it was the bonding at the lower rate. Yes,
so what did that mean?
when we bonded FRR, we bonded some monies that didn't need to be used.
Yep,
So, that debt exclusion then moved over to, and from my understanding, Carol may know better than me.
Yeah, I'm happy to explain it. Basically,
and sorry, I'm gonna just finish because it's a second question. And I'm gonna guess the answer. So I don't know where Driscoll is ending up. And I'm guessing that for these kinds of reasons, it would probably be too soon to talk about like doing something with leftover money from Driscoll, because I'm guessing you like to wait a few years to see what comes up, but that's sort of,
That's usually what happens. And
okay.
if there's significant monies, it doesn't get bonded, basically. So it goes back to the taxpayer. That happened in a number of our projects prior, in prior projects. I think here, we as the owner of the high school can request that the building committee of the high school do this project. And they then through the building commission will determine whether there's funding for it. I mean, that would be the way to go about it. I think, you know, the stuff that has to happen at, you know, the HVAC stuff, whatever it's called, I don't know, what do you call the stuff that Messier is doing? Help
That's
me.
good, the tunnel.
It's the tunnel, repairing the tunnel and the water infiltration there.
Mhm.
That probably should also, I mean, because the high school was a project, even though that particular area wasn't part of it. I mean, it's either going to come out of the CIP or it's going to come out of the project. It's one of the two. And that one's above my pay grade, how that works. But I think that this piece is something that we as a school committee could request. So I think I'm just trying to think through a process of, you know, so that we don't drag this on forever. Maybe you could get the information for us at our next meeting next month. We could,
Sure.
we could have it ahead of time, look at it. We could even determine, I guess we have to do it in the public meeting. I mean, we probably would have to bring it to the full school committee, I think. Because I don't think it should be just the capital subcommittee that decides it. And once we see what Newton did and how they went about doing it, maybe then we'll have a better, clearer way forward. But I think I could speak with the chair of the high school building committee, or maybe you have spoken to them already to tell them this might be coming up. Hal, in the
I
meantime,
haven't addressed it with anybody on the building commission.
not building
Certainly,
commission, I'm talking about the building committee, because they would be the ones that would, it, you
yeah,
know, ask.
you know, they know in the abstract, but I haven't talked to George or Nancy or Susan in a while. So not specifically about this, but certainly they
Mhm.
know the scope of things that still are outstanding. The things
Okay.
that we're gonna, you know, the simple projects we were gonna be handing off to get the little punch list type things to clean up.
Okay. Carol?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer Carolyn's question. What happened with Ridley is the MSBA reimbursed after we had borrowed and spent money. Because we had borrowed that money at a low rate, those borrowed funds were then reallocated to the Driscoll project, so we wouldn't have to borrow money at a higher rate. It was just the authorization. And just to remind everyone, the CIP is really stretched thin and there's not going to be much free cash to fund it. So
Wait a minute, I heard there was 16 million this year of free cash?
I don't know. But, you know, Melissa's been warning that there isn't going to be as much free cash as we had, whatever it was.
Well, last year was a lot. It was like
Last
23
year,
or
right,
24
right.
million.
So, just like with the, I don't know what's going on with the garage under town hall and the Pierce project, you know, so I think there's good reason for the building commission to be holding on to money to fund all these things. And, you know, I mean, you might say maybe if there's money left over after those other two things are taken care of, this
Well,
would
I
be
think
top priority.
they're two separate things. This is a need of the school building, from the school build, you know, the debt exclusion from the high school. The other items are more townwide issues. That
No,
you're,
I meant about the tunnel.
the tunnel.
Where
Thank
money's
you,
gonna come for the tunnel.
thank you.
So you might just put it at the top of your list whenever it is they feel comfortable spending the money.
I think, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's this summer they're doing it, isn't it?
Yes,
Isn't it going out to bid?
it is going out to bid and hopefully we get an estimate soon. I've been waiting. And as Hal said, it's probably gonna be high in the six figures, so.
Okay.
So Helen,
Right.
are you looking for us to sort of opine or just listen or?
Well, I think people have said what they thought, unless there's more that people want to say. I think we need to get some information from Newton. I will try and follow up at least with the building chairs at the high school subcommittee, the committee on the high school to find out where what the budget looks like and see what's feasible and get back next time.
Okay.
with
And
what-
I'm not sure, I will just say for the record, because I'm not sure I did say clearly. I do think it would be important to have some kind of, I think governance documents probably a good idea. But my support is, I would assume that whatever that is reasonable. So directionally, I just want to be clear that I support the high school's desire to do this.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything or,
I support it as well.
Thank you.
okay. And I will support it depending, looking at that information and I the only thing I might question is the numbers, because there seemed like a little bit of overkill. In terms of how many cameras there are. And especially in the back where there isn't as much foot traffic and people, on Welland Road. But that's a smaller discussion.
Right.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
you're welcome.
Thanks,
Do we have any new business? Anybody?
I'm going to reiterate something that I said in an email. And I feel like this kind of came up a few times peripherally, just in terms of like how much of the R&M budget gets spent and goes back into free cash. There were, by my count, something like $260,000 worth of work done at Newbury and OLS over the summer that were showing up on reports and then stopped showing up on reports. My understanding last time this got talked about a little bit was that R&M was used rather than giving those funds back to free cash, which in some respects I understand. But I believe it's really important that the accounting for our building projects is very clear and transparent, because the public needs to know what the projects really cost. And if we subsidize them from other buckets, then we never know that. So I've brought this up a few times, and I would like to see that spending sort of addressed and explained and better accounted.
So Carolyn, I think I was thinking about this quite a bit, and it seems to me both OLS and Newbury are town buildings, first and foremost. They're school and town buildings, and that's what our repair and maintenance budget is there to do, most of that. The projects have added to those buildings by being able to do more work there than we might otherwise need to do to maintain them.
Helen,
And that would be the way I would look at it.
$260,000 worth of work was done to
Yes.
prepare those buildings to be swing space very clearly and specifically for the Pierce building project. And it was always talked about that way.
But for every
Always.
project,
There's
Carolyn,
not one penny should be spent at Newbury other than from the Pierce project. It is swing space.
well, what about the elevator?
Can I just ask, is this new business? Like, I don't have any problem with talking about it, but like,
Oh,
we're
okay.
past 5:30 and,
Well, I don't know how else to continue to talk about this publicly, which I feel is, I have to do it. Like,
but doesn't
that's
the new
job.
agenda, doesn't the new business being like, we suggest a future agenda item?
Well,
that's
I would
noticed?
like this to
Okay.
be a future agenda item.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Any Other. So just for the committee's knowledge, the GMP will be discussed at the Pierce School Building project. It has come in under budget, which is a good thing. And I'm really excited about it. So that should be that will be posted for our school building committee.
Ellen, you
Yes.
know,
That is new business, by the way.
we haven't gotten anything yet. And John Van Scoyac in his email to the world called out the Pierce School Building Committee, the fact that the things aren't put up in advance.
It was put up today.
I haven't received, well, unless it came in during this meeting,
No,
I
it
have.
was put on the school bill. That's my understanding. I actually did see it. But I'm assuming it's up. I'll take a look afterwards.
But we should have it 24 hours in advance if we're going to have a meaningful discussion, just like Charlie gave his information 24 hours in advance so people can have to think about their questions. And it has not been the standard, I will say.
I know they were rushing to get it to us. Hold on, I'm looking
Yeah,
at
they always rush. They need to
Well,
up their
you
deadline.
know, they didn't have the numbers until Friday, so and it's not in here. It should have been.
Okay, but I just wanted to point out that that was a very public notice of by John. Of
I
that
didn't see
practice.
it. It was so public that I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm not sure where he posted it.
he sends out an email to.
I'm not on his
constituents.
list.
You
Sorry.
should sign up.
I'm not that interested. Thank you.
Are we all set with today? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Maya.
Thanks.
Good night,
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Charlie. Thanks, Hal.
Take care,
Thanks, Susan
everyone.
and Joe.
Thank you.
Uh,
Night.